Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Art Talk. My name is Joshua Justice. I am the gallery coordinator here at Mott Community College's Fine Arts Gallery. Art Talk is a series of conversations with artists, professional artists, educators, and historians, and we discuss their process and insight into the creative process. Today, we are welcoming Jason Schroeder, artist, painter, photographer, model. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you all for being here today.
Great. So let's get started let's talk about your background and how you became an artist and how you kind of discovered your style.
All right. Well, I didn't start out as an artist. I discovered throughout my life that maybe I might be an artist. I went to school for something else. I got a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was studying pre-medicine. And then in my senior year of that year, I started taking classes in art history, and I had a really great instructor who just planted a seed, and she just said, you should try making something. Why don't you try photography maybe? And even then, I was trying even to try to maybe squeeze in a photography class before graduation, but it just didn't work out. I couldn't get it in. It conflicted. Something happened. Long story short, that seed that she planted was an idea in my mind. And after I graduated from school, I started thinking about maybe making some art, and I didn't know where I wanted to begin, but for some reason, because of the tradition and history of the fine arts, I thought, I need to be a painter. I need to paint. I want to paint. I want to make drawings and paintings. And so I went to Delta College, and I started taking classes there one at a time. And I started developing my artistic skills and discovering myself as an artist there. And that's where I started taking photography too. And I had a really great instructor there. Her name was Linda Menger. And I learned so much from her when I was at Delta College. And I took independent study from her, and we learned together. She taught me about large format photography and medium format, things that were beyond the scope of what we were doing at the community college in the regular photography classes. And she helped me prepare to go to art school, and eventually that's what I did. I went to Chicago, and I went to the School of the Art Institute, and I earned my BFA and my MFA in studio arts. And it was a journey that took from beginning to end. When that first instructor said, well, you maybe should try making something, to the time that I graduated from art school, that took about 12 years. And so it was a long time, but I made it, and now I live in Chicago, and I have a daily artistic practice. I try to make something every day. And it's true that I am a multimedia artist. I work primarily right now with photography, but I'm also a painter, and I work with mixed media and collage. And I like the idea of taking my photography into collage and what that might do in the future. But right now I'm thinking about these images as a work all by themselves, standalone as photography.
So your background a little bit is in psychology and whatnot. Is there any overlap that you have with your art and that as kind of a art therapy? Is there any sort of where you would explore that option?
There was talk of that possibility while I was in school, but it isn't really something that I was interested in pursuing. I think when I decided to go in the direction of becoming an artist, I was thinking of really just focusing on becoming an artist. And because to me, I was going back to school for art, and I'd already been to school for something else. And so it just wasn't my mindset to be trying to combine what I already did with what I was trying to do then. And even though they have a strong art therapy program at the School of the Art Institute, it also is quite rigorous in terms of its requirements, in addition to being the things that you would need to get the studio art degree. It would have been even more years of school. And so even though I thought about it, I just thought it wasn't really where I should go.
Right. So you said that you try to do like one piece of art every day. So how does your daily process work when you're, trying to accomplish that?
I try to maintain a constant awareness of what's going on around me, and I look for a moment in every day, wherever it is in my travels or in my time in the city, or if I'm here in Michigan, wherever I am an artist wherever I am. And so I try to make something every day, wherever that may be. And um, so I think what it is there's always, it's like that little voice that's in your head too. You always have to listen to it. You can't say no. You might not even understand why it's telling you to stop, but you have to stop and do the work. Just do it. Listen to the little voice inside your head and take the picture. And usually it's because there's something about that moment, and maybe you don't even really realize what it is at that time, but there's something about that moment that's special, that's different from all the other times that you've passed by that spot. And to me, that's what it is. I'm looking for that moment in my day.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a detail, or it could be a scene. It could be like a landscape, or it could be something about the sky that day, or the weather, or trying to capture a moment of motion or energy in the city that happens in a blink of an eye and then everything changes again. Or even it could be just like the way the buildings are lit up that night. When you're trying to look all the time and you're trying to notice things, like you really do see changes even day to day. And the skyline looks different every single night. It's different.
So how many days do you, like in a week, how many days do you go out and say like there's a particular building I want to capture, compared to how many days do you just wander around and say I'm going to take this street this many miles and turn left? Like,
I think that's an interesting question. In my practice in the past, I used to do what I thought I would go out on photo shoots. I'd be deliberately going out for a walk with a camera in hand, trying to make photographs. And maybe it was a place that I was interested in, or maybe something that a building, like you said. I would go to that place and try to do a photo shoot. And sometimes they would be successful, and I would get an image or two that I really liked. But what I've found actually that works for me better is to try to think about the things that I'm interested in photographing, but then watch for the moment when it's in an interesting light, or the moment when the weather that day is, or the reflections of the clouds in that building that day are so different than what I've ever seen before, or something striking about that subject. So it's like I have a catalog of things in my mind, like in the background. Oh, well, someday I'd like to really get a great shot of that. But then that day I look at it and it's like, well, there's nothing special about it today. It's just kind of like it's sunny out and there's no interesting shadows, or it's like maybe it's midday even or something. Time of day matters. Everything matters. So I try to think about the things I want to photograph and then watch for them to appear in interesting light or interesting times.
I look at this picture that's behind the camera right here, and you say like time of day matters. Like, there's no way that you could have captured something like that on a sunny, like, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, that picture has to be specifically like you driving at night in the snow for it to
Right.
have that, like, that feeling to it. And a lot of them, the one that's in the corner over here, was on a rainy day that you had your camera out, and um, it looks amazing. So it's just a happenstance that you're there at that time taking that picture.
My dad always says, you're always in the right place at the right time.
You
But
have
I
to.
think the key to being in the right place at the right time is to know what you're interested in and then put yourself there a lot of times. And then a lot of it is luck. It's just like, well, on that day you were there in the right place at the right time. It happened just the way it was supposed to. And that's why I have so many series going on all at once too, because if I wait and only do, skylines and focus just on that, and then I don't pay attention to things like little detail shots, like little piece of the road that I think is interesting or something like that. Like that one over there is just a piece of the road, a detail of the street by Union Station in Chicago. And I thought the pattern of the way that the stop line stripe was worn down was just so interesting. And I was just crossing the street and trying not to get run over to get that shot. It's like, oh, I see it, and then there's traffic. It's terrible. And so I was literally there for like 15 minutes waiting for a clear time to be in the street so I could be looking down on, with my camera to get that. But some of it's patience. You have to be patient. You have to take the time to not get run over.
Right. Yeah.
But patience for waiting for the right moment for your subject matter to appear at that time when the sky is beautiful or when the light is good. It's patience, and you're kind of like lying in wait, just waiting for that for something to happen. And to me, I'm not picky, because I have interests. I know what I'm interested in. And so if something I'm interested in appears that day, it's like kind of like the luck of the draw. And over time it accumulates, and maybe this image today goes into this series, and maybe the image I take tomorrow fits into another series. And they maybe are even separate bodies of work in the long run, but it's all my work. And I don't ever say no. I just make it and then ask questions later. I think that's important too, is to just do it and not question it too much. Just like try and just make it and then see what you have. And then afterwards, like, be the judge.
Do you ever go out and like take a picture of a skyline and then come back and start processing it and then realize, oh, I should have taken a step left? Like, do you ever have that kind of regret after taking a picture?
I mean, it happens. You think always, well, this could have been better if only I had done and such.
If only the cloud had been.
If only that cloud had not done that.
Cloud. Yeah.
I don't touch up things. I don't take out wires. I work with what's in the world. I don't Photoshop out clouds or Photoshop in clouds. What you see in the images is what was really there. The only things that I do are I will adjust contrast, or if I think the color needs to be bumped up a little bit to punch it up a little more and make it more interesting, I'll make adjustments that way. I do curves adjustments for contrast. Like, people who understand Photoshop will know what that means. But it's really just a way of adjusting the output levels of light in the image. So you can make the lighter areas lighter, the darker areas darker. You can make the darker areas lighter. If you want to bring the darker areas up, like you can tone down the lighter areas by dragging the curve down. You can reverse everything and make a negative image that way too. Sometimes I do experiments and I think, ooh, this would look really cool as a negative image. Mm-hmm. I try everything, like, why not? And there's no cost to it really, because like with digital work, there's endless shooting. You can always delete whatever you don't like. And then this is true with edits too, like edit it this way and see how it looks, and then edit it this way and see how it looks, and decide later what your best one is. Like maybe this one looks good with grain added to it. It's like, or maybe, excuse me, this maybe one image might might look better if it's cropped a certain way. So thinking about format, pardon me, I'm sorry. This is what happens when I talk so much. Thinking about format is something I think about afterwards a lot, is how will this image look as a crop? Like, how can I crop it to even make the composition stronger? But in the camera, I try to make as many decisions as possible in advance, but without getting bogged down and losing. You can't lose that moment too. You have to react. Sometimes things change so quickly. So in the camera, what I try to do is at least focus where I want and get in the exposure level in the ballpark where I want, because if I get bogged down with trying to pick exactly the perfect aperture and shutter speed together, what I need is something I can work with that's acceptable enough or best for the time that I can capture what I want. And then I go back and adjust the contrast and the color and turn to black and white or keep in color and things like that. I make all those decisions afterwards.
So I noticed that a lot of it's still true to form and really just kind of bumping up the contrast and whatnot, and that it seems to be your style. Like I looked at your portfolio and saw like some of your older stuff, and it was a little more stylistic and whatnot, and then you could see kind of a gradual, you know, into this style. Like, how did you decide that this was more how you wanted your art to look, how you wanted to represent yourself?
I don't know if it was ever a conscious decision. I think what happened is, as I was making my work, I started to see what I thought was more successful or less successful, and I just started learning from myself. And the things that I thought were more successful, I just did that more. I did more of that. And the other things, I just stopped or changed.
Yeah, I was scrolling through your Instagram to like kind of get a feel of your art style, and there was like kind of a hard stop of when there was like, from very stylistic like negatives and very colorful stuff to a little more the black and white and the subtle coloring of it.
Sometimes when I feel like the world is crazy, I would literally,
Right now.
like sometimes even right now or over the summer, or Chicago's kind of a crazy place right now with things that are going on politically, and so I've taken liberties with my photographs. Look, sometimes when I think the world is spinning out of control, I let my art sort of spin out of control too. And not out of control, but I take even greater liberties with color. Or I'll be deciding that this is going to be a weird negative image, and then I'm going to make it like unnatural hot pinks with the sky is yellow, and everything's wrong. Like, it's not like the way the world really is. It's completely more like a painting in that regard. So over the summer, you're right, I did some experiments that way, and I think it's good to do that stuff. I like a lot of that. A lot of those images I think are really strong, but I didn't select any of those to show alongside these because I just thought that as a show, it didn't, like, they were something else altogether, like going in a different direction altogether and too wild to be like with this work. So I didn't stop myself from making it.
Right.
But I made it, and it's there, it's out there, and it's even recent. Like over the summer, I've been doing it, but I just didn't include it here.
You just kind of put those in the back pocket.
Yeah, they're just kind of
later.
another thing going.
So how do you approach your style for, say, a city like Chicago compared to like a city like Bay City? Like, what are you looking for compared to a big metropolitan area compared to a quaint little town?
Well, having lived in both places for many years, I'm struck by the contrast every time I come back or go back and forth. And I think that's what I try to look for when I'm photographing each place, is that contrast in terms of space. Like in Chicago, the space is really compressed, and a lot of times packed, just really packed, and the images can be almost busy. And it for me in Chicago, what it is it's like trying to find the simplicity or the quiet there, or something that holds together as not chaos. That part of it too is finding that moment where it's just not chaotic, you know, like finding a moment that's like coherent and interesting and it's in good light. In Bay City, it's simpler. It's more wide open. The space is not compressed. It's like you see to the horizon in many instances, even when you get outside of Bay City, for all around in 360-degree directions, you can see to the horizons everywhere. It's flat. The Saginaw Valley particularly is extremely flat. It's even flatter than Illinois. And I think that the contrast between the two places is what strikes me the most, and I look for when I'm here, and I'm trying to see what's different. But then what's interesting too is there are things that are in common. Like I have this series of images like the Mr. Hot Dog sign, and like Chicago, you know, is like famous for its hot dogs. And we have a lot of hot dog stands, and I photograph hot dog stands and restaurants everywhere I go. You know, it's like a series. I don't know why I even am attracted to them, but I do. I photographed that one. It's in the show. But the other day I was in Bay City and I photographed the B&C Pizza when we got a big party pizza there, and I was the only car in the lot, and it was dark and it was all lit up like a Christmas tree in the pizza place, you know, and you could see the lonely window where they're like tossing the dough or whatever, and you could see the light coming from that window. And anyway, there are things that I see in Bay City that are like in Chicago too. And so I guess what I'm getting at is even though there's differences, there's a lot of commonalities. I really like the grittiness and the industrial, and that's here and there. It's everywhere. You know, like we live in a post-industrial society. A lot of the industries that existed have been converted into places where people live now, both in Bay City and in Chicago. There are condos now in the place of factories, people living, you know, in $1 million homes where people used to sweat and work really hard. You know, the contrast is striking when you think about the history, but we share that in both places. Both Chicago and mid-Michigan share that common history. And so here I see it too, and so there are images of this area that are oftentimes could be confused maybe for images of Chicago. Maybe not in this show, because I was trying particularly to pick images that would contrast the two places more.
Right.
But the reality is that there's a lot in common in terms of the visual landscape. But the difference most likely, or not most likely, but the most difference I see is just the way space is laid out and the distances between places.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, there were a couple pieces as I was hanging it that I was confused as to whether or not it was Bay City or Chicago, because there are, like, you know, obviously the skyscraper ones, like those aren't here, but like I think there's one over there that I was like, okay, that could be like downtown, like Old Town Bay City, or that could be, but it's just very, you know, each town has their own look, but at the same time they all kind of blend together and look alike sometimes. So, did you, when you were picking out the pieces for this show, what was more of the thought process of narrowing down? Like, why why choose both Bay City and Chicago? Why not choose one or the other?
Well, it was because it was here,
Hmm.
and I wanted images of mid-Michigan in the show. And I think of both places as my home. And so to me, it seemed natural to include it, not just natural, but necessary for me, for the show here to include images that were also from here or nearby here. And so I wanted images of mid-Michigan to be in the show. But I mean, you're right, I could have just made the whole show about Chicago.
Right.
But I thought that would be a little pretentious because I'm here and I was invited to show in this space, and I have this work that's also tied to this community and to this place, and I think of this place as my community too. And so that's why it's here in the gallery. I wanted both
Yeah,
together.
it shows a good contrast of like where you're from compared to like where you are and how the two kind of like blend together.
And it's important to me to reiterate, and I think the selection of the work does that, is that as an artist, you just make work wherever you are. And if you travel someplace, you make work there. If you choose, if you decide you're on vacation and you don't want to make work, that's fine. But if you're in a place and you're an artist, it's okay to just keep making work, especially if you're a photographer. And so I think that having the two places together in one gallery is just reflective of my artistic practice, is just make art wherever you are and whenever.
So how often do you go back to doing painting or doing other styles of art, or are you just strictly kind of focusing on photography at the moment?
It's not often enough. Right now I've strictly been focusing on photography, and then my New Year's resolution was to make art every day, to try to make at least one image every day, and then I ended up making on the average 2 a day. So now I've created almost 700 photographs since January 1st. And
Okay.
so I'm really being productive that way this year, but at the expense of everything else. I haven't been in my studio to paint or think about collage or anything like that. And my work life is chaotic. I work as a model for artists all over the city of Chicago in like all the different art schools and art departments and arts centers and community art groups, drawing groups everywhere, suburbs, downtown, all over. I'm traveling all the time. And so that's why this practice too, like it puts me in all these places that I maybe wouldn't necessarily be if I was just going to an office downtown every day or something like that. I'm literally going someplace different every single day, and I'm traveling all over the city, usually on my bike because I like to bike. And so I'm all over on my bike with my camera, trying to find something every day. And that's really it. I mean, I don't know what it's going to be when I wake up in the morning, but by the end of the day, I have something done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, with rare exception, today and yesterday is an exception. I haven't made any work.
So what do you take in your camera bag? Like what's in your toolbox of camera gear?
You're going to be so disappointed when you hear the answer to this question. This is my camera. I used my cell phone camera. I admit it. It has the ability to be controlled manually, which I almost never do. I use the automatic feature a lot of times because it's programmed to make a good image that I can edit, and I'm trying to capture a moment that's going to go away, and sometimes goes away within seconds. And it's too hard to carry a camera bag all around when I'm on my bike and in the city and all around and in bad weather,
Mm-hmm.
So I have had so many experiences with other cameras. I love them all. I have a digital camera. I have a film camera. I have the ability to use those things again if I choose to. but I choose not to right now because it would be a different practice. It would be more like before when I would like deliberately go out on a photo shoot, you know, and I maybe get a handful of images that I like from that photo shoot, and it maybe would direct my work in a certain way, but it wouldn't be like all of these things that I'm capturing in my daily life because it just wouldn't be possible.
Right.
So I hope you're not too disappointed, but I do shoot with my Samsung, and I edit in my phone as well many times. Oftentimes, it allows me to make something every day. I use Snapseed, the app from Google. It's free. You can download it for free. It's like having a little miniature Photoshop inside your phone. I make adjustments to contrast using dodging and burning, you know, like the traditional techniques, but I do it with my thumb. You know, I color it, you know, it's like coloring. It's like painting, but you know, it is painting because it's digital photography and it's all made up of little square pixels. And you really have the control of going right down to that individual pixel in Photoshop and coloring it if you really wanted to. So you can hand paint pixels, you can dodge and burn pixels, you know, it's to me, it's photography, but it's just another way to paint, but it's like a mechanical way to paint. It's a mechanical means of production, but then the post-editing is where it gets creative for me. You know, I can make the images really beautiful, like something beyond what it's just captured. I mean, like they are snapshots at first in my phone, you know, like they don't really look like something I would want to show right away.
Yeah.
But I change them all, you know.
So some of these shots, you know, are taken from different vantage points, you know, rooftops and whatnot. How did you get to? We talked before everybody came in here about not going into like restricted areas and whatnot and bad experiences with that. But how do you get to different spots like throughout the city to get, you know, a different view?
Well, it depends on how I travel. When I'm in my car, it affords a different perspective than when I'm on my bike. And then if I take public transit, like in the trains, that's a whole new perspective too when you're on the L. And then, you know, some of these are taken from trains, from train windows, like that one behind you is, for example.
Oh, wow.
We're in motion. I get one shot at it usually, like I have to try to time it just right. I don't use burst or I mean, I think it has the capability. I could use the sport feature or whatever, and I could do like a burst of shots and it would go click, 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 and try and capture like 10 images as I move. I never do that. I just try to like, just get it and time it, you know, and if I miss it, oh well, but I'll just try it again. You know, I've just gotten good at it too. I mean, the more you do it and the more you get used to your camera, you know, and what it can do. I do things to make the images as best as I can because I realize I'm working with already a sort of limited means. It's a digital camera that's not like a DSLR. I can't shoot in RAW or anything like that. So it's not like I have that strong editing capability that I would have if I had that kind of powerful camera out. But I do know that I can do things in this camera to make the images better. And one of the things I do is if there's a chance I might shake or my hands might shake or if it's cold or whatever, I'll use the voice command feature. And I'll maybe even brace the camera against a tree or a branch or something to keep it steady. And I'll say the word, shoot. And when I say it, it makes a picture. I don't have to touch the screen. So when you touch the screen, it causes a jostling. It causes the image to become blurry. So even just using the voice command makes a huge difference. And if I can't do that, you can use the self-timer feature too. So I'll just set it for like 2 seconds and then I'll press the button and then by 2 seconds has passed by and then the camera's not moving, it's not shaking or anything. So you get a perfectly clear image that way too. So I guess I've taken steps or like sort of precautions to try to like get the best image I can out of this limited camera, the cell phone camera. You know, you can touch the screen and it'll focus right where you put your finger. So it's like, I decide in the moment, well, what do I want to be in clear focus in this image? Where should the focus of it be? I don't just point up and shoot, because the camera then will figure out, it'll decide the same way I did, but maybe it won't. So at least with touching my finger to the screen, it's like one decision I can make right then too, that I'm saying, this is the focus, this is where I want the primary focus to be. And I usually shoot in a 16:9 widescreen, and then, because it gives me, if I want to crop it down to a 4:3 or a 5:4 or even a square, I have that option.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't usually like just set it for square or set it for 4:3, because then you're limited to that. But with the 16:9 or with the full screen shoot, then I can always crop down. But there's exceptions to that too. Sometimes I just know it's going to be a 4:3, and I want that format in my mind. I see the picture in my head. I can see like how I want the picture to look. And sometimes there's advantages of setting that aspect ratio right in the camera, because it'll change the lens so that it captures more of the scene in a different way.
Right.
So part of it's just getting to know what your camera does, and you know, like you get to know what to expect when you make the choices that you make, and every camera is a little bit different.
Yeah, I've heard it said that the best, like when people ask you like what's the best camera, and it's whatever you have on you at the time.
Yeah.
To
I
shoot,
stopped
like,
myself for years because I wasn't using my best camera. You know, it's like, oh, but I'm out here, but I don't have. And then I just stopped that because the technology caught up. It got so good that I'm like, why am I stopping myself now? These cell phone pictures are actually really better than my first digital camera, and I can make prints way bigger than I could have ever made back in 2005. So I thought to myself, I'll just pretend it's 2005 and I have like this super advanced digital camera right in my pocket, and now I'm in the future. So there was a moment, I think it was in like about 2018, when I just said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to use this camera because I'm out here and I have it, and I'll just do the best I can with it. And I just started to try to do what I could to like make the images that I could make with it better and stronger, and then post editing.
Yeah.
So
what kind of advice would you have for students that, you know, because not everybody here might be a AFA student, they might just be taking, you know, an art class.
Right.
Similar to what you did. Like, how would you, what kind of advice would you have for kind of discovering if this is what you want to do, if this is what you want to do for like a full-time thing, or if it's just like a passive hobby?
Well, it's hard for me to answer that question because I don't think of myself as just a photographer. I think of myself as a multimedia artist. So for me, the question was like, I decided I wanted to be an artist, and I knew I had this sort of in me, and like, how am I going to make a life that way now? You know, what am I going to do? And so, you know, I was always of the mindset that I wasn't just going to be able to be an artist unless I had some magic fairy came and gave me money, or, you know, I won the lottery or something. I was going to have to figure out a pathway to be an artist and also make a living too. So, you know, it's a great career. I know people that are professional photographers. You know, I wouldn't consider myself to be a photographer that would be competitive to take on freelance work or some, you know, that I don't think of myself that way. I think of myself as a fine art photographer, and that my work is that I'm trying to make interesting images. But I don't think of myself as like I would be the person to apply to photograph this new product for, you know, I don't have the right camera for that. I do have the training and the knowledge. I have the equivalent of a photography degree, but I just took all my classes at community college and then at art school all over the place. So it never I don't have it on my resume that I have a degree in photography,
Same.
but it's this cobbled together experience that could have been a degree in photography had it all been in one place or something. But
And that's kind of the importance of, acquiring the knowledge as well as, schooling and whatnot, but also the outside influences and experiences and whatnot.
I think that if you're really serious about that kind of photography work, like as for career and freelance work and that kind of thing, that it's important to make a really good portfolio, and I think if I was interested in doing that I could get the camera, get the lighting, and I have the training and the knowledge, and I could put together a portfolio like that and start applying for freelance work and do that stuff if I wanted to. But right now I'm supporting my practice as a model for artists, and I enjoy doing that because it puts me in all the different places where it puts me, and it helps me make my work. And there's to me, as an artist, there's not really a separation between life and art. It's like you have to live your life. And to me as an artist, it's like breathing. You have to make your art. And when I wasn't making anything, I was really unhappy. And part of the photography practice is really just my life can be chaotic, and this is what I can make in the days that I have. And it's a choice. It's like this or nothing sometimes, And I'm like, well, yeah, this, because I'm making good work and I love what I'm making. So I'm going to keep doing this. But, in my future practice, there's going to be times when I can be in the studio to paint again. And there's going to be times when I make other types of work too, and go in different directions. But in terms of advice, I think you have to just follow your heart. That's what I did. I didn't worry about what was going to happen or how much money it was going to cost or if I was going to get accepted or how I was going to move to Chicago. I did actually worry about all of those things. Gina, my wife, will say for sure that I was always worried about those things. But at some point, you have to let that worry go and just trust that you're going to find your way and just listen. You just have to, it sounds like a cliche, but you just listen to your heart, and find good mentors too, I think. People will help you. They want to help you. If they know that you're interested in something and passionate about something that they are also interested in and passionate about, they will adopt you, they will help you, they will write letters for you, they will teach you. If you show them that you're interested, there's someone out there that wants to help you. So find your mentors, they're out there.
And that's kind of the importance of networking with what you do as well, is that this show, somebody will see it, invite you up to the next show, invite you up to the next show, and then, you just kind of grow from there.
That's the hope. And that's what happens too. It is happening. Things lead to other things. It kind of snowballs a little bit. So I'm hoping to build a snowman.
Okay, I think it's time for questions from the audience. So let me turn on the mic. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah. Let's step out of the way.
So even though you didn't go to school for art therapy, when you do it, is it still like a sort of therapy like when you do it? Because like how you said, when you wasn't doing it, you wasn't feeling happy. So like, even though you don't got the degree in art therapy, do you still feel like it's helping you, your inner self, when you draw and take pictures and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yes, I do think that. I don't think of my practice as per se art, like therapy for myself, but it's true that when I wasn't making my work and when I felt lost and I didn't know what I wanted to make, or I felt stuck, that I was unhappy. And making my work, and it makes me happy. I feel accomplished. I feel like I made something that I can share, and maybe something interesting that somebody might relate to. If I can connect with somebody I don't know, through art, that would be, beautiful, But it is therapeutic to make work. It definitely is. And I would say that if I can't make something, that I'm not as happy. And I think that people who are not professional artists or don't think of themselves necessarily as professional artists should still make things or find something about life that, I mean, you don't have to be like a professional. You can be a hobbyist, you can just have fun. You can enjoy what you're doing, and you can make things for yourself. You don't have to make it for anyone else too. Just do what makes you happy. If you want to paint, paint. If you want to make photos, do it. Don't stop yourself from doing it, because then you'll be unhappy for sure.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Donna. I'm a photography student.
Okay.
And the picture that's under the hot dog one, did you take that with your cell phone?
I did.
Wow. Were you like laying down?
I
Or
am
just-
quite flexible. I practice yoga.
Okay.
But I was not laying down, but I was, back, my back was arched and I was like leaning back, looking straight up, I have gotten on the floor and laid down. I have done everything to get the shot that I want.
Hi, Jason.
Hi, Jamie. It's so nice to see you here.
Great to see you here in Flint, Michigan. My question relates to academics. Not many people know, but you were academically very advanced in the class of 1995. I think you were our class valedictorian, in fact. Weren't you? Weren't you up there at like 4.0?
It was close. I chose not to take AP English because I liked the regular English teacher better. She was also my German instructor and one of my favorites. So I didn't get the extra points.
So
I was the salutatorian.
You were salutatorian of our large class in Bay City Central. Did you ever face any kickback from family or friends because you wanted to become an artist and you didn't chose something like doctor or lawyer or anything like that?
Well, it was, I would have to say, it was probably a shock to everyone, and my parents included. They sacrificed a lot for me to go to school. And, we all borrowed money to do it. I took out loans, they took out loans, It was serious. And it wasn't a decision that I took lightly. It was hard to do, to say goodbye to a path that you thought you were doing. And I'm getting emotional about this. And to go forward with all of that history and then nothing. Literally, I had nothing. I'd taken one art class and had no portfolio. And I announced to my whole family that I was becoming an artist and I was going to go to art school. And I wasn't going to medical school anymore. I didn't want to get that PhD anymore. I didn't want that anymore. And it was not easy for any of us. I think it was hard for those years. The expectations of what was going to happen and what didn't, it was hard on everybody. It was, and it surprised, I think, everyone, or a lot of people too. Everyone who knew me then, in those days, now when they meet me, they're kind of maybe surprised to see what's happened. It's like, what? Who is that? What happened? But it's because I wasn't willing to shut down. I knew that I wanted to do something different, and I decided that no matter how difficult it was going to be, and I had the support of my wife, Gina, always behind me, and that really was what made the difference. And over those 7 years at Delta College, when I slowly built my portfolio, and then I was working there as a tutor, still doing all the same things before, like tutor by day, artist by night. So I'm doing physics problems and calculus and all this stuff still, like while I'm trying to make my art portfolio and go to school. And I can still do calculus. It's crazy.
I can't.
But, you know, life changes, things change, and I think you have to listen to your heart, like I said before. And I did, and I had the right people behind me too that supported me and that made a big difference. And my family came around, my dad and everybody, you know. My mom isn't with us anymore, but I know she was really proud. And she's here with us right now, I think.
I think so. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. So I want to thank you for coming by and speaking with everybody today. I would like to thank the Ballinger Trust for making this possible. I'd like to thank the Fine Arts Department, the staff, and all the students.
At the end of this thing.
And I'd also like to thank Media Services for all their help putting this together. Thank you very much. Do you
Thank
have
you.
any upcoming shows that you would like to plug?
No.
Okay.
I don't have any upcoming shows other than this one right now, but there will be.
Okay. Well, this is going to be open until December 5th every day. So once I get the chairs out of the way, feel free to come by and take a closer look. Thank you again for stopping by.
Thank you for having me here.
And
I appreciate it so much.
thank you. And have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.